everyone. Welcome to Krista Explains It All. Today we're going to be talking about 9 expectations versus realities that we had moving in as a couple.
Yeah, this is a fun one. It's always interesting what your expectations are when you move in with someone and then seeing what things turn out to be. No regrets, obviously. We're both very happy. But these are some things that I think, wish we had known coming into the situation and definitely took some adjustment and time to work through.
For sure. Yeah.
Do you want to start or do you want me to?
I'll start.
Okay.
So the first expectation that we had was around the fact of me moving in with caregivers. I think Connor had an expectation that, he's been living with caregivers for most of his life.
True.
The last handful of years, solely alone, just organizing his care, morning,
Right.
evening, night.
It's true. I think part of at least my reason for expecting things to just continue seamlessly is that, I had lived with at least one significant other previous to Marissa, and in that time, that person that I was with was actually performing most of the caregiving. So I had never really dealt with a significant other and caregiver at the same time. It was actually that relationship that sort of taught me that I don't want my significant other to be my caregiver. I think it creates a very what's the word I'm looking for here?
I mean, I could think of a word. I don't know if it's the
What's
one you're looking
what's
for.
what?
Codependent.
That is the word I'm looking for. Thank
Oh,
you.
nice.
A very codependent relationship, and I think that was a direct factor for that relationship ultimately failing, and I didn't want that happening. It. So when Marissa moved in, I and she actually,
Yeah.
to your credit, was very adamant to not be a caregiver. So I expected the infrastructure that I had built over the years to just continue working the way it always worked. And
Reality sets in.
yes, I use the agency directed model, which we'll probably talk about in other videos, but just a TLDR version. The agency that I work with hires caregivers to come in and take care of me. Now, with that, they're not my employee, they are the agency's employee, and the agency kind of dictates what their responsibilities are. Um, when it comes to caregiving, you think of things like bathing, dressing, feeding. Those are kind of the obvious things, and those continued. The non-obvious things are things like laundry, changing bedspreads,
Cooking.
cooking, washing dishes. Now, those are things that I obviously need help with and would have a caregiver for. The question is, when you now have someone else living in the home,
And that
where
becomes a shared common space.
where is the line between my needs specific to me and a shared need? Prime example would be Marissa and I sleep in the same bed. Is it the caregiver's responsibility to change sheets? Is it Marissa's responsibility to change sheets? The gut instinct obvious answer is that the shared responsibility. Typical couples will either split that, i.e., one person will do it one time, the other person will do it next, or they'll divide responsibilities, like it's one person's job to do laundry, but it's the other's responsibility to
Fold it or
right.
put it away or do dishes or some other house
Yes.
chore.
Unfortunately, some of the caregivers I had didn't see it that way. They felt that it was not their job to do anything that fell into the shared category.
Yeah.
So, it kind of took us some time to adjust to
Divvying up those tasks appropriately.
making sure that we were staying within the bounds of the agency's strict requirements, but then also setting our own boundaries with those caregivers to not let them kind of use Marissa as a scapegoat to do nothing and get paid to do nothing. But it certainly took many months to get there. And I think it's something we still struggle with.
Yeah, I would say I say we learn from our mistakes.
We did.
For sure. And then in addition, I think also it allowed us to be able to be better at the future choices, when it came to different things that we would divvy up between each other.
Yep. And along the way, we've developed some, I would call it, caregiving routine hacks and some tools that help us. One of those being the skylight calendar.
The skylight calendar.
The next one is, I guess it was a bit of a surprise to both of us. Although to me it probably shouldn't have been, because it's something that I've lived with my entire life. I just never really experienced it in such a stark manner. Marissa is from, I would call it a rural country town. Is that a fair assessment?
I wouldn't, but
what would you
but
call
your
it?
definitions, I guess, sure.
What would you call it?
I mean, I just think it's a smaller town. Like, I wouldn't call it rural.
Let me put it this way. The suburb that I grew up in is double the population of the city that she grew up in. So we'll put it there. So that being said, I think we both kind of had this idea that when Marissa moved in, we would be living the big city, what's that stupid show that all the women my mom's age love? Sex in the City lifestyle. Constant stuff to do, going out after work, going out on weekends. The reality is, being disabled isn't always the most conducive to doing stuff. I'm used to working a 9-to-5 job, but I wasn't used to having a companion to go do stuff with after work. And as much as I wanted to do that, after being in my chair for 9 hours, my back hurt, my butt hurts. All I want to do is lay down and be in bed for, an hour or more after work. And then by the time I'm feeling up and ready to do stuff, it's 7:30. And you gotta go to bed.
Do it all over again.
Do it all over again. Do you have anything to add to that?
Not particularly. It was just a shift of, I'm constantly on the go, I have to say. Like, I I enjoy going out and doing things. I enjoy just being outside, constantly doing something. And I have had to come to the reality that some days that's possible. Some days I have you and we're just going. And other days I have to remember to take a step back that like there are things that I'm not factoring into that you may need extra time doing or extra time, catching up because the week has just been a rough one.
Or the day. I mean, it could just be a really bad day.
Yeah, like you've, not had great sleep that night, or a new caregiver came in and, getting that adjusted, so that takes your energy.
Yep. Especially if it's an overnight caregiver. I mean, because then
you don't sleep well. You have to learn to do all of, train all of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's always training on the fly, because as much as the agency model is convenient for finding warm bodies to come in, they don't particularly do your job of educating them on my needs.
What do you mean? You don't have a 63-page document explicitly outlining what you would like in your care and how to properly care for you?
I do, and one of the things in those 63 documents is how I use a suprapubic catheter. I don't use a suprapubic catheter.
Oh,
how that made its
new.
way into my care plan is beyond me. But here we are. And, getting back to the point here, it does a very seasonal dependent. From basically a giant teddy bear, although a very thin teddy bear. From about November to April, I pretty much hibernate because my body just does not function when the weather drops below
I would say 60.
I would say 60.
60?
With a heavy sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Which,
But then you have the heavy sweatshirt causes
True.
the inability to drive properly, and you just, I would say comfortably probably like 70, 68.
Yes. Which, living in the North Atlantic, is not half the year. So for the long half, I'm typically indoors because I just don't function outside. Moving on to the next reality or perception versus reality, similar to big city living, is we are DINKs. And if you don't know what DINKs are, that's double income, no kids. I had been supporting myself via, a mortgage, monthly food, what have you. We, or I, assumed that Marissa moving in would be essentially disposable income because none of the expenses really changed. There was no, additional car payment. There was no additional utilities other than the nominal increase in electricity. Food, sure, but that's not a ton.
I mean, I probably put a dent in your food budget. Let's be honest.
It's fair. But
you don't get to this size without enough food.
Not touching that one. I'm a trained husband. That's a lose-lose. But relative to your income, like, food isn't.
I know.
Yes.
Just give me a crap. I wanted to see if he'd fall for it. Note to self, he didn't.
So we assumed we would have, all this extra money to spend, all this extra money for savings. It didn't work out that way. It's amazing how, even with the most detailed budget, the more money you have, the more money you spend.
Trust me, I try to reel him in.
I think we reel each other in.
I'm not a big spender.
You are. We just spend on different things. I spend on, food and going out. more
which is
on.
typically more expensive.
Well, I was gonna say I think I spend less incrementally, but more frequently. Whereas you like to make infrequent, quite large purchases.
Yeah.
Typically on things that you don't need. Just throwing that out there.
Wow. Okay. Throw me under the bus.
I mean, I don't need beer and food, but I like to buy them. So don't usually.
I mean, you do need food. You
Yeah.
don't need beer.
It's a different argument. For another day. I was still off there.
So we've come to realize that we maybe aren't keeping that great to our budget, and our double income is definitely, I mean, don't get me wrong, we are saving, we are doing other things that we just thought we would be saving more than we currently are.
And I will admit that we are saving a lot, especially recently. You know, we did just pay for our wedding, pay for our honeymoon. So there are a lot of big expenditures that don't happen more than once, I hope. Hopefully I won't have a second wedding. So I had to factor that in, but I would have hoped that we would have saved more by now. That said, I think another aspect that none of us considered, it's something I've always known, but never fully experienced, is just being disabled is expensive. I mean, everything that we want to do costs more because of my disability. If we want to travel,
I mean, renting a vehicle more
renting a
expensive.
vehicle, you know, a typical car rental for able-bodied people is 25, $30 a day.
Yeah.
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 For an handicapped accessible van, it's a minimum of 110
Yeah,
a
I
day.
think it was 110,
So
120.
when we went to visit her family for a week, renting a van cost $800.
Actually, I think it's closer to
It
$1,000.
was, yeah, right, it was. So that right there, you know, that's not including hotel, airfare. So if we go somewhere for a week and fly, it probably costs us $3,000 between room, van, airfare.
Yeah.
So things are more expensive. We have adjusted by essentially
Basically weighing out the cost of driving
versus flying.
versus flying.
So much so that we now, at a minimum of 2 times a year,
Yeah.
drive 2,000 miles one way to visit her family because it's cheaper to
And
drive than fly.
yeah.
So we take a 30-hour drive
Over
over
flying 5
6
hours.
yeah.
Yeah.
because it's cheaper and because it's safer. And no, I'm not some I'm scared of flights person. It's just airlines and wheelchairs don't mix. Anything you want to add to that one?
No, I think that's summarizes it. The next one is a slightly touchy subject still.
It always will be.
But prior to coming to the Northeast, I had a dog. His name was.
You still have a dog.
I still have a dog. His name is Azraq. He's a Australian cattle dog, which, if everyone knows, is a very active breed of dog.
Why is his name Azraq?
His name is Azraq because he's a blue heeler, also known. He's half blue, half red heeler. So Azraq is blue in Arabic. Because I couldn't be the normal person that like names their dog Bluey or Rojo or Azul. You know, you got to be fancy. So in coming out here, I was like, oh, I'll just bring Azraq. You know, he'll join daycare. You know, he'll get used to city life. You know, everything will be fine and dandy. in all reality, it didn't go as expected. Let's just say.
No.
I think just the pressures of being in the city. I mean, he's been in the country, had a yard, had, outdoor time anytime he wanted. He just couldn't handle being in the city any longer. Anything and everything started to, aggravate him or, get on his nerves. So, we tried daycare, we tried, multiple walks a day, anything you could possibly think of. Trainers, yeah, we did
one-on-one training.
One-on-one training, group training. We tried everything.
We even did the boot camp was in the way.
Yeah.
We went on a vacation and did the kennel, was it boarding train?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I mean, just looking at him, you knew that this wasn't the place for him. So.
And to be fair, it wasn't. He was fine in public, generally.
Yeah.
I mean, he has moments, but generally he was fine. It was at home that he had trouble. I think, I had a small dog at the time. She's since passed away of old age. We have cats. They wanted to be friends with her. My dog wanted to be friends with him. Really, I think what did it was he's very protective of Marissa.
Mm-hmm.
And the carousel of caregivers coming in, I just think it was too much for him. Seeing new people, not knowing where his space was, where Marissa's space was. It wasn't for him.
Correct. So now he is currently living with my mom in the Southwest. So he's with his brothers, chilling with a big yard and stuff. So every time we go out to visit, we definitely soak up time with him.
Yes.
So that's one thing that kind of expectation versus reality, one of the unfortunate things. But
and that was one that we took. It was a slow learning process. I mean, we really tried.
We did
to make that work. I mean, I think you lived here for at least a year,
if not a little longer. Yeah.
Before we really decided it just wasn't.
It wasn't best for him.
Yep, agreed.
We were keeping him here for me, and that's not. That's not right.
It was a tough one.
So the next thing we have on our list is basically realizing the expectation was, moving in as a couple, it's shared space, it's shared, I'd be getting ready, Connor would be getting ready, that kind of thing. And just having privacy, I guess is a good way to call it.
Well, I think just as a autonomous human, I think everyone has an innate expectation of privacy. I think being disabled, you tend to lose that. So I didn't really have that expectation, but I expected that Marissa would have privacy.
Yeah, and it's just the reality is morning caregivers come in, evening caregivers come in. It's a small apartment. You've got shared space. You've got, the way our apartment's set up, you kind of have shared amenities, bathroom, that kind of stuff. So it's just, it's basically like Connor always has a +1, and in terms of privacy, you just gotta accept that fact.
I mean, for example, in the morning, if Marissa's showering and I'm getting ready for work and I need to put my catheter on for the day. Okay, side note, I realized I said I don't have a suprapubic catheter, and now I'm saying I have a catheter. It's a condom catheter, completely different thing. Okay, back to the story.
It's located
in the bathroom. So I either have to wait for Melissa to be done,
AKA ask your caregivers to please hold off until.
correct, which I can do, but it now makes us late to work, or the caregiver has to
Just go
go
in and
in.
get what she needs.
Yep. I mean, it's one thing if it's male, female. My morning caregiver is a female, so it's
It's not as if as a female, it's not as awkward if another female is getting something from the bathroom if you happen to be in there or.
and theoretically they are a healthcare professional.
That's right.
So
Licensed, certified.
I wouldn't go that far. They're
They're accredited-ish.
sure. So it's in the guise of medical, but it's still an invasion to some degree, and that's a tame example. But a less tame example would be my overnight caregivers are both men. Marissa and I sleep in the same bed. When I turn, they have to pull the sheet, blanket, whatever, down to be able to turn me. Marissa's asleep. She's in a nightgown. Depends on, but it's a, wait, what do you call it?
Chemise.
Chemise. They're not bikinis, but they're certainly revealing. And you've got older men coming in when she's asleep, pulling a cover down, and she's only wearing a chemise. Again, they're medical professionals, they're licensed nurses, they are licensed. So it's not untoward, but it's something that you have to get used to. And again, as a disabled person that's lived with dozens upon more than I can count caregivers since I was 18, I have zero modesty when it comes to being naked around people. So for me, it doesn't faze me. But I have to acknowledge that I'm used to it. Not everybody is. And I think it took you some time to really get used to it. Thankfully, I think not everybody would. I think one of the things that makes us work, and one of the things I love about you, is you kind of, you accept what you have to if it gets you what you want. And for some reason, you want to be with me.
Hey, I do.
So.
The next one on our list is basically, have you ever, wash your dishes, put them back, go to use them again and found out that they're not there? Or, take off something, put your clothes in a certain spot, you go do something, now they're no longer there. Basically just privacy of stuff, just knowing, expectation was, obviously if I put something down, I expect it to be there when I get back, just because as a single person living by yourself, that's typically,
Well, even if you're living with someone.
Even if you're living with someone, there's an agreed upon,
And a mutual respect of
space and items.
Hey, this is where this goes.
Yeah. But reality is living with a caregiver or a +1 in the home at all times,
And to be clear, when we say +1, it's really a +37, 58, because the one isn't the same one.
Correct.
It's a revolving door of
whoever picks up the shift for the day, basically.
Correct.
So it's always, I had to come to the reality that sometimes the dishes aren't going to be exactly where I think and expect the dishes to be, or.
And as much as Marissa asked me to stay on top of a caregiver, to tell them where to put it. At the end of the day, I can't do it myself, and there's only so much I can do to make somebody else do something.
Yeah, and you also, I mean, I have come to the realization that, like, I mean, nobody likes to be micromanaged in their job either. So you kind of have to come to that realization that, like, this person is working, like, this is their job, and like if Connor's constantly like, oh, you got to pick up the plate and put it here and do this, or you have to wipe the sink after you're done, or things like that. If Connor's constantly just doing that, like, it doesn't create a great environment to be working in.
And that's why you sort of have to, when it comes to having caregivers come in at NLP, this is not the time. Sorry, we'll hang out with you later. When you have caregivers and they're good, when they check the right boxes, you have to be willing to accept where they're not great. If they can pick you up well, if they can dress you well, if they can, pardon my French, wipe your butt so that you're not itchy all day, you might be willing to overlook the fact that maybe they don't put the dishes in the right drawer, even though you've asked them 6 times.
Yeah,
And I think that was something,
we had to learn.
well, I think I learned that years ago. I think for you, it was tough to, like, I think you came into it with the stance of, it's your job, just do it. But, like, with the way the home care industry is and the pool of workers, you kind of just gotta accept the best case scenario, which isn't always the ideal scenario.
Sure. I mean, I think that's really, like, in terms of privacy of space, that's kind of the only things that I can think of that, like, expectation versus reality wise, like, it was that one I think was the hardest and is still something that I struggle with.
Yeah.
So
I also, I don't know if it's a result of years of being disabled and dealing with caregivers and dealing with doctors and major health issues, but I think I have a little bit more of like a laissez-faire attitude than you do. I don't know if it's just my personality or, again, result of disability, but I think that makes it easier for me to be like, well, so what? Like, is it a big deal that, the spoon is in the wrong drawer? Like, just put it back in the right drawer.
I also think that's just a male-female thing.
Well, maybe. So, I think another big one on our expectation versus reality list boils down to something that really I think all couples experience, and that's, when you start the dating process or courting, if you will, you really put your best foot forward, and then you kind of, as time goes by, slip into kind of your more natural state. For us, a big thing was our sleep patterns. I think we expected them, based on our dating life, them to match up. I'm more of a night owl, and
I'm a morning early bird for sure.
with that, at night, especially after a long day, like to have what I call my wind down. And what that typically means is just laying on the couch and watching TV, or, while I'm doing that, drinking a beer, maybe eating a snack. And that typically lasts from about 9:30 to 11, 11:30. When we were dating, we did that together. So we
Yeah.
would kind of lay on the couch like this and maybe watch TV. Marissa would play with my hair, like she's doing now. But, you know, and then after, wind down, we would go to bed together and
Cuddle.
cuddle. Uh, but not so much anymore. Um, Now we go to bed separately. She goes to bed much earlier than me. And then, it used to be that I would try to get up early to be up with you. Not so much on the weekend anymore. I went to sleep till about 9:30.
Yeah.
Even then,
I
that's
feel like even then you're getting yourself up earlier than your body would like you to sleep.
that is absolutely true. But there are, let's say, uh, motivations that will get me up early in the morning.
Wow.
There are. It's just that the problem is that those motivations typically only last about 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'm usually super sleepy again. So, yeah, there are things that will get me up early.
Get you up early. Really.
No pun intended. And then I think that leads into Marissa's favorite.
Oh, my favorite reality versus expectation. Ooh. So, my favorite expectation versus reality is being able. Well, I mean, I guess you're a single person, you have a whole bed to yourself, you become a couple, you now have to share the bed. But, so you assume 50%, 50%. But, you okay? But, with Connor, I get more like 75%.
I mean, you have to admit, you're used to, at least in Topeka, you slept in a twin. So, upgrading to a queen is already a giant step up for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
But the nice thing about having all the room, one of our expectations was that we would just cuddle every night. That we would get into bed together and fall asleep like this. Because this is what we did when we were dating. And I like cuddling and I liked falling asleep together. But there's a lot of real estate on the bed, if you can't see. So, in reality, since we go to bed different times now, what really ends up happening, you want to show me your favorite position? It's this. And Melissa, you call this your...
Starfish.
This is how she sleeps.
Thank goodness for having a disabled husband.
I'm glad I can do something for you. Now this leads us to our, at least my, last but not least, reality versus expectation versus reality. I assumed that when we lived in together, we would just be like buddies in springtime together. That we'd be going at it.
Wow.
What? You didn't think that would be the case?
Just keep going.
I assumed we'd be like buddies in springtime, just go at it all the time. In reality, I'd like to say hashtag married life, and if you know, you know. But the truth is, it's not that. It's just the fact that life is exhausting. And I think, as I described earlier, being disabled at the end of the day, my body is kind of just had it. So sometimes, getting in the mood is tough. And I think that's true for you too. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, especially if it's a day where, like, somebody's called out for caregiving and you have to step up after a long day at work. It helped me. Um,
Or even just like work stress kind of bringing it home when it really should just be staying at work.
for sure. And then I think another piece of it too, and honestly, this is a really big piece, is kind of just the lack of privacy. And I don't mean lack of privacy in that we have furry critters staring at us, as weird as that is. I mean, being able to spontaneously be intimate when you know that someone is scheduled to be in at a certain time can kind of take the
Spontaneity out.
I was gonna say the passion, but sure. For example, my evening caregivers for the night come in at 10 p.m. If we've say cooked dinner that night, by the time we've gotten home from work, cooked a meal, done the dishes, put everything away, gotten changed our work clothes, it could be 9 o'clock. And at that point, it's like somebody's coming in at 10. Do we really feel like we want to jam in being intimate in this hour? Being constantly feeling like you're watching the clock while that's happening so that, it doesn't smell like rabbits in springtime by the time the caregiver comes in. So we've had to adjust, and I'm not proud to say, but part of that is scheduling those times in so that we it's a need for our relationship. I think it's part of both of our love languages. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that's important to us, so we have to make a concerted effort to schedule it. And it's I think that's just the reality of the situation, and something that we don't really see a lot of interabled couples talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's an important part to our relationship, and I think it's important for people out there to know that if it's something that is important to you, you can take steps to make it work and schedule it, and there's no shame in that.
For sure, yeah.
And that doesn't take away from the spontaneity. We still have our spontaneous moments.
We do.
We do. If I'm lucky, maybe at the end of this video,
Oh my gosh.
I will get one of those spontaneous moments.
Yeah?
If I'm lucky. Maybe if you're lucky.
Oh,
maybe,
if I'm lucky.
Maybe you'll be the lucky one here.
Maybe I will be.
On that note, I think we need to go.
Oh my gosh. Yes, we do need to go.
So, thank you for listening to us, and I hope, you've learned something, or, if you're considering moving in with your significant other, if they have a disability, or if you have a disability, I hope these are things that you've considered. Again, no regrets, no regrets, as the as the kids say. But it's there's a learning curve.
There is, yeah.
So if you enjoyed this, hit the like button. If you haven't, hit the like button anyway. We won't tell anyone. And please subscribe. Just smash that button. Come back. Stay a while.
For sure.